At this moment, the woman narrating the story stops. She discovers decades later that she saw him when he was 11 years old. Her shoulders shiver a bit despite the veil covering her face. Claimed that because she needed the job and didn't intervene, she accepted the justification and normalized the strange because it was dangerous to address it. It's not about a single dramatic moment of disclosure. Rather, it's what makes the story so tragic throughout the documentary. This procedure was repeated once more. The image that no one wanted to see is the result of countless of little moments. Now that its legal teams scramble, the atmosphere shifts, and it is obvious and inevitable that spokespeople make statement after statement, yet each denial just helps to emphasize what is being denied. Every accusation of dishonest editing just makes viewers more attentive. Every assertion that this is all taken out of context merely makes people ponder what conditions may make anything acceptable. More people start to provide their own perspectives about patterns they've observed, not only in relation to Diddy, observed throughout the industry, such as the transfer of power, how exposure to adult excess from childhood grows into an adult expectation of excess availability, and how a generation's normalized disorder becomes an operational strategy for the next generation. At last, at 11:52 p.m., the breaking point was reached. On January 13th, less than 48 hours after 50 Cent's initial declaration, a fourth clip was released. In an interview in the late 1990s, at the start of his bad boy reign, Diddy was asked about the influence of his mother. The fact that this is a professional video instead of a home movie makes all the difference. The response, which was delivered with complete confidence and no self-consciousness, contains details that at the time sounded like gratitude. He describes how she taught him how to control a room, how she showed him that authority is earned rather than given, and how she made sure that he almost as an afterthought. He describes how mom used to take him to adult activities so he could see how real power functions after realizing that loyalty means prioritizing the interests of the family. It sounds different when you mix home videos with the testimonies and everything else. The interviewer at the time laughed and wrote it off as a nice story of a determined mother preparing her child for success. Instead of abuse in the traditional sense, it appears to be evidence of something harder to pinpoint and thus harder to prosecute, of limits that should have existed but weren't, of protections that must have been provided but not, of a childhood that was intentionally sacrificed instead of ignored, via the notion that a kid needed to be exposed to a harsh world without any sort of screen or protection in order to be prepared for it. The silence became suffocating in boardrooms throughout the industry, and companies began secretly evaluating their partnerships when CEOs realized they could no longer maintain objectivity. Streaming platforms reassessed upcoming projects, and corporate sponsors began considering the prospect of continued affiliation, not because guilt had been proven, but because the optics had become problematic, because it became harder to defend working with someone whose early years seemed to have been like that. Instead, they choose to ignore it. Furthermore, without overt denials or evidence that differs from what's being, it turned out that staying far away was the safest option. As of January 14th, the documentary has not yet been released, although, in terms of narrative, the conversation is already over, but not in terms of public interest, which is just growing. Control, because when pattern recognition kicks in and viewers start drawing their own connections, the degree of damage control may reset perception. There is a video. Testimonials are recorded, a chronology is made, and most sadly, Diddy's recorded words clarify exactly what people are currently questioning. He told everyone about what his upbringing emerged. He discussed his mother's methods openly. The difficulty is that the very things that are currently being re-examined as harmful were praised by them. Since contesting the new interpretation means contesting his own prior claims, refuting what's the empire starts to disintegrate. At this point, since being proposed means giving up his arrogantly declared rights, not because of internal strife, outside pressure, or the impossible task of defending a legacy. Based on teachings that seem harmful now, such the necessity of weighing his personal worries about his mother's strategies against her public acclaim, from seeing his entire Genesis story rewritten in real time, as opposed to lies, but by rewording them, Because he attracts more people, the more he argues for it, there is no way out. People make more assumptions about him the longer he remains silent. The more his people attacked the program, the more viewers believed that there was anything worth defending against. For the first time, Diddy was apprehended not by accusations or proof he could dispute, but by his personal narrative. During decades of talks, he openly talked about his early years. Through a lifetime of unconditional celebration of his mother's influence, asserting that his achievement was due to his influence, but never acknowledging the possible consequences. With cameras now trained on every aspect of his past, those repercussions are being freely decided by viewers who are watching the movie and creating drawings, not by prosecutors, culture, or their own assessments of the circumstances that resulted in the actions for which he is currently facing consequences. The walls closed in mentally more than actually, because when your protection demands that the unquestionable, when your argument requires changing the past to solve problems that appear inherently valid, and when your legacy, you're fighting memories, as much as allegations, since it has already been documented, fighting footage is what you're fighting your own words. Furthermore, the fight is never won. From that moment forward, nothing would ever be the same. The documentary is still pending release. The whole no video is available. Whole testimonies have not been heard. But it no longer matters, since the discussion topics have shifted from "did this" to "what does this signify?" Furthermore, once the public stops, that shift occurs, starting to have doubts and questioning the facts. Consequently, the damage isn't just once finished. It cannot be undone. Not because 50 Diddy's reputation was destroyed by scent, but because of Diddy's personal story. When upon deeper examination, it was found fissures that were always present but hidden in the open. Praised as strong, reframed as tactics for survival, learned too quickly, and be deployed as well, ruthlessly.